Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Sunday, March 1st, 2026, and I want everyone listening to just take a second and really look at that date.
It is definitely a date that should be circled in red marker.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're a business owner or a property manager or, frankly, just anyone who pays attention to the machinery that keeps the UK economy ticking, you know that the calendar isn't just staring back at you today, it is screaming at you.
It is. The countdown has officially entered the final month.
We are exactly 1 month away from April 1st, 2026. And no, we are not preparing for elaborate April Fool's pranks. In the world of commercial property, April 1st is basically D-Day.
Right. It's the day the new business rates revaluation finally comes into effect across England and Wales.
And D-Day really isn't hyperbole here, is it?
Not at all. We're talking about a complete reshuffling of the financial deck for every single physical business in the country. From the tiny corner shop in a village in Leeds to the massive, sprawling logistics hubs up in the Midlands, right up to the glass skyscrapers in Canary Wharf.
Everyone gets a new number.
Exactly. Everyone gets a new number and a new bill.
And usually when we talk about taxes or government ratings, I can feel the audience's collective blood pressure just sort of drop from boredom. Sounds dry, right? National non-domestic rates. It doesn't exactly get the pulse racing like a true crime thriller.
No, it doesn't. Until the envelope lands on the doormat.
Exactly. Until the bill arrives and you realize your fixed costs just jumped by 40%, that wakes you up pretty fast.
It definitely focuses the mind.
But this deep dive is really about decoding what is actually happening in 4 weeks' time. Because we have pulled together a massive diverse stack of sources for this one.
We really have.
We've got the official government guidance from gov.uk and the Valuation Office Agency. We've got deep legal history from Wikipedia, which, believe it or not, actually gets into some incredibly weird case law involving bakeries and spark plugs.
The legal definitions are fascinating. I mean, truly.
We've also got cold, hard market analysis from real estate heavyweights like Knight Frank and Clutton's. And we've got specialized tax advice from firms like Ryan and Compare Office Space. And the picture they paint is, well, volatile is the polite word.
It is incredibly volatile.
Oh.
And the big takeaway here, the reason we're doing this deep dive today, is that this isn't just an administrative update. This is essentially a redistribution of wealth.
Right.
Some sectors are going to see their bills skyrocket. Others are going to see them drop. And there is a very specific, very strange disconnect happening between what the market feels like today, right now in March 2026, and what the taxman actually says your property is worth.
And that leads me to my absolute favorite hook for this entire deep dive. The idea that the tax bill you get next month in 2026 is actually based on a ghost of the economy past.
That is a very poetic way to put it, but strictly speaking, it's accurate.
Because the valuation isn't based on today's reality, is it?
No, it's not. And that is the absolute critical thing to understand right off the bat. The numbers that go live on April 1st, 2026 are not based on 2026 rents. They are based on the open market rental values from exactly 2 years prior, the antecedent valuation date, or AVD, which was April 1st, 2024.
So we are literally paying taxes based on what the world looked like in April 2024.
Correct. And think about the lag there. Think about how much an economy can change in 2 years.
A lot.
If a sector was booming in early 2024, perhaps riding a post-pandemic high but has crashed since then, the tax bill won't care. It is frozen in that 2024 moment.
The tax system is effectively time traveling.
Yeah, it's bringing a 2-year-old reality into today's cash flow.
That is just daunting. Okay, before we get into the winners and losers, and oh boy, are there winners and losers in these sources.
Huge ones.
We need to go into the engine room. We need to unpack how this machine actually works. I think most people just see a bill, curse under their breath, and pay it. But what are we actually paying for?
So at its core, business rates, or national non-domestic rates, are a tax on the occupation of non-domestic property. If you occupy a building for business, you pay.
Okay.
It's basically a tax on the benefit of having a physical footprint.
Simple enough. But the sources get really specific, almost obsessively specific, about what property actually means. It isn't just a building, is it?
No, and this is where the legal definitions from our sources get really interesting. The term they use is hereditamент.
Hereditamент. Sounds like something out of a Dickens novel or a Harry Potter spell or something.
It definitely has ancient roots. But in modern rating law, the hereditamент is the exact legal unit of property being taxed. It is the atom of the business rates universe.
Okay.
And it is not just 4 walls and a roof. A hereditamент can be a single floor of an office block. It can be a mine deep underground. It can be an advertising hoarding on the side of a brick wall.
Wow.
It can even be sporting rights.
Sporting rights, you mean like hunting?
Yes, the right to shoot or fish on a piece of land can be a separate rateable hereditament. You literally get a tax bill for the privilege of fishing.
That is wild. I mean, getting a tax bill for a riverbank?
And it gets even more complex when you talk about what constitutes a single hereditament versus two separate ones. There is a famous case mentioned in the legal sources, Gilbert v. Hickenbottom from 1956.
Oh, I saw this in the notes, the spark plug analogy. I have to admit, I read that section twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating.
It's an absolute classic in property law. So usually the rule is this. If you have two buildings on opposite sides of a public road, they are two separate hereditaments, two separate bills. The road breaks the unity of the property.
Makes total sense.
But in this specific case, the court had to decide on a bakery. They had the main bakery on one side of the street and their repair depot and dispatch operations on the other side.
Right.
The question was, is this two businesses or one big business split by a strip of tarmac?
And what did they actually decide?
They decided that the functional connection between them was so strong, so essential that they were one hereditament. The judge, Lord Denning, who is an absolute legend in English law, used the analogy of a spark plug. He argued that you can take a spark plug out of a car engine. You can hold it in your hand. It is technically a separate object from the engine block.
Sure.
But its function is entirely dependent on the engine, and the engine is completely useless without it. So if the separation is just a technicality, but the function is totally unified, it is one taxable unit.
I really love that. The law trying to make sense of the real physical world. So because the bakery couldn't bake without the dispatch, and the dispatch had nothing to ship without the bread, they were just one engine.
Precisely. And in 2026, this concept still absolutely matters. Think about a modern university campus with buildings on both sides of a street or a massive logistics park. Defining your hereditament is step one in figuring out your bill.
Okay, so we have the hereditament. That's the one. Now, how do they calculate the how much?
It is a simple formula with complex inputs. Rateable value, or RV, multiplied by the multiplier equals the bill.
Okay, let's break those two things down. The multiplier, that sounds like a comic book villain.
It's much less exciting, unfortunately. The multiplier is set by the central government. It is essentially the tax rate expressed in pence.
Right.
So if the multiplier is, say, 50 pence, you pay 50% of your rateable value in tax. This gets adjusted for inflation every year, usually in line with the retail prices index, or CPI, depending on the specific legislation at the time.
And we have absolutely no control over that. That's just the government saying this is the rate.
Correct. The multiplier is a fixed reality.
So the rateable value then, that is the big variable.
That is the variable. That is the estimate of the annual rent the property would command on the open market. And this is where the Valuation Office Agency, the VOA, comes in.
Right.
Their job is to look at your property, its size, location, condition, and say, on April 1st, 2024, if this was empty, and to let someone would have paid X amount per year for it.
And that X amount is your rateable value.
Precisely.
So let's run a really quick example just to be clear.
Yeah.
If the VOA thinks my shop was worth £100,000 a year in rent in 2024, and the multiplier is roughly 50 pence.
Then your base bill is £50,000. Before any reliefs or transitional adjustments are applied.
Okay, so that is the engine. Now let's actually drive the car. We established that the valuation date is April 1st, 2024. Let's talk about what the sources say regarding the retail paradox. Because this section of the research was honestly incredibly depressing.
It is very stark. We have data here from the tax consultancy firm, Ryan, and they paint a picture of a sector that isn't just struggling, it is physically shrinking.
The statistic that jumped right out at me, and I literally had to check this wasn't a typo, was the disappearance rate. They say over the past 3 years leading up to this revaluation, 28 high street retail premises have disappeared per week in England and Wales.
Per week. Just really think about that for a second. That is 4 shops every single day.
Yeah.
That is a small village high street completely vanishing every 7 days.
And when they say disappeared, they don't just mean vacant signs sitting in the window, do
Oh,
they?
no, they don't. They mean demolished. Or completely converted to alternative uses like residential flats. Or they've been taken out of the rating list entirely because they are basically uninhabitable. Ryan identifies a net loss of 4,410 retail premises since November 2022.
That is a massive chunk of real estate.
We are seeing banks, estate agents, florists, charity shops, the actual physical fabric of the high street just vanishing.
So if you're looking at that specific data, logically, you would think, okay, demand is down, supply is shrinking, shops are closing everywhere. Surely the tax bill, the rateable value should go down too.
Yeah.
That is just basic supply and demand, right?
That would definitely be the logical assumption. But here is the disconnect. The VOA reports that for the 2026 list, overall retail rateable values have actually increased by 9.3%.
Wait, the high street is dying, 28 shops a week are closing forever, and the government says the remaining shops are worth 9.3% more in rent than they were before.
It seems completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? The total rateable value for retail rose from about £14.697 billion to over £16.062 billion.
How is that even possible? Is the VOA looking at a completely different country?
Well, there are a few very specific things happening here. First, remember the ghost of 2024 we talked about.
Right, the antecedent date.
In April 2024, we might have been seeing a slight post-pandemic stabilization in rents in some very prime areas.
Like the big luxury spots?
Exactly. Maybe Regent Street or the Trafford Center saw rents tick up slightly. But the experts at Ryan argue that this overall uplift is significantly higher than current market conditions justify.
They actually used the word disconnect, didn't they?
They did. They expected a muted revaluation, maybe flat, maybe a tiny rise. But instead, we are seeing this quite substantial hike.
Right.
And the main problem is the unevenness. The valuation system is essentially trying to apply broad market data to highly specific locations.
So painting with too broad a brush.
Exactly. If you are a flagship store on Bond Street, maybe your rent did genuinely go up. But for secondary and tertiary high streets, the local parade of shops in a struggling town demand is incredibly weak. Yet the broad brush of the revaluation seems to be painting a picture of growth that many everyday shop owners just do not recognize at all.
And for a business operating on really thin margins, a 9.3% increase in their fixed property tax is, well, it could be the final nail.
It absolutely could be. Ryan calls it a critical financial risk for portfolio retailers.
Portfolio retailers meaning the big chains.
Right. Imagine you are a chain with 500 shops across the UK. If your rates bill goes up nearly 10% across the board, that is literally millions of pounds wiped straight off your bottom line. You can't just find that kind of money in the sofa cushion.
No, you really can't. So retail is struggling but paying more. Let's pivot to where the money is actually going. Because if the high street is the big loser here, the sources are very clear about who the winner is, or I guess the payer.
The boom sectors, logistics and industry.
The Amazon economy.
Precisely. If we look at the data from Clutton's, the contrast is just jaw-dropping. They compared the 2023 list tone to the 2026 expectations. And the numbers for industrial space are unlike anything we've seen in recent rating cycles.
Give us some of those exact numbers because they blew my mind.
Okay, look at Park Royal in London. This is a prime industrial location, absolutely vital for serving the city. It's where the last mile delivery happens.
Right.
Clutton's reports that rents and therefore rateable values are up approximately 93.9%.
84%.
Almost doubling, going from £165 per square meter to £320.
That is insane. Imagine your rent doubling literally overnight.
It reflects the sheer desperation for space. It's the overwhelming demand for last-mile delivery. Everyone wants their package in 2 hours.
We're all guilty of that.
We are. And to do that, you need warehouses close to the city center.
Right.
There just isn't much land in London. Supply is incredibly low. Demand is virtually infinite. Prices just explode.
And it's not just London, right? This isn't just some capital city bubble.
Not at all. Hemel Hempstead is up 80%. Barking and Dagenham up 66%.
Wow.
Even looking further out at the Northwest and the Midlands, which are the traditional industrial heartlands, large distribution warehouses are seeing increases of around 45%.
So purely from a tax revenue perspective, the burden is dramatically shifting. It is moving from the shop floor straight to the warehouse floor.
That is the macro trend playing out. The tax base is following the economy. The money has moved online, so the tax man is simply following it to the fulfillment center.
Makes sense.
But again, for a logistics company, even if you are highly profitable, a 94% increase in your tax assessment is a massive shock to the system.
It's a shock that gets passed on to the consumer, presumably.
Almost certainly. Margins in logistics are heavily volume-based. If fixed costs double, that £3 delivery fee becomes £5, or the base price of the goods goes up, We all pay this tax eventually.
We always do. Now, sitting in the middle of all this between the dying shop and the booming warehouse is the office market. And the sources here, specifically Knight Frank and Clutton's, describe a really interesting phenomenon. It isn't a simple boom and it isn't a simple bust either. It is a massive divergence.
A tale of two cities, as the outline perfectly puts it. The headline here is the flight to quality.
Break that down for us. What does flight to quality actually mean in a post-pandemic world?
So post-2020, the way we use offices changed fundamentally. Hybrid working became the absolute norm. Companies realized they didn't need as much space because people are only in maybe 2 or 3 days a week.
Right.
But, and this is the key, they need much better space.
To bribe people to come back in.
Exactly. If you want employees to endure the commute, the office has to be nicer than their living room. Better coffee, better air conditioning, roof terraces, collaborative zones, premium gym facilities. So the demand for grade A top-tier office space skyrocketed.
And the demand for the crummy 1970s office block with the flickering fluorescent lights and questionable carpets
Plummeted. Nobody wants it. And the 2026 revaluation captures this split perfectly. Knight Frank points out the variance just within London. The city core, the main financial district, is projected to go up 35.6%.
That's healthy growth.
It is. But Soho, which has that cool lifestyle factor, the media companies, the ad agencies, is up 51.2%.
Over a 50% increase for an office in Soho. That is literally the price of cool.
It really is. But then look at St. James's. Very prestigious, very old money, but already incredibly expensive, only up 11.9%. There was basically a ceiling to how high it could realistically go.
Right.
And Bloomsbury, the academic heartland, expected to drop.
Expected to drop. So it really is street by street at this point.
It is entirely street by street. And regionally, it's the exact same story. Manchester and Leeds are seeing massive, massive hikes for that grade A space. Manchester up almost 55%, Leeds up 57%. It shows that this isn't just a London story at all. It is a quality story. If you own a prime, eco-friendly building, your taxes are going up because your asset is fundamentally worth more. If you own secondary stock, they might stay flat or even fall.
This volatility creates a ton of uncertainty for businesses, though. Like, will my rates go up 50% or will they drop? This brings up an interesting point from the Compare Office Space source. They talk about the serviced office strategy.
Yes, this is becoming a very popular hedge against all this volatility.
Because if you lease a normal office, you sign a 10-year lease, you pay the rent to the landlord, and you pay the business rates directly to the council. If the rates go up 50%, that is your problem.
Correct. You carry all the liability.
But in a serviced office, like a WeWork or a local equivalent, the rates are usually bundled into the monthly license fee. The provider takes the risk, right?
Exactly. The provider pays the rates bill to the council. The tenant just pays a fixed monthly fee.
So the source argues that businesses are flocking to these setups for predictable costs.
Predictability is everything right now. It transfers the shock of the revaluation completely from the tenant to the landlord or operator. It is an insurance policy in a way.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you are terrified that the VOA is going to hike the value of your office by 60%, moving to a serviced office insulates you from that immediate cash flow hit.
That is a really smart strategy. Okay, so we have retailers getting squeezed, warehouses paying double, and offices splitting into clear winners and losers. The government isn't blind to this, obviously. They know a sudden tax hike can bankrupt a company. So let's talk about the policy landscape. What is the safety net here?
There is a fairly significant safety net in place. The government has announced a £4.3 billion support package to smooth this whole transition.
$4.3 billion is a lot of money. How is it actually being used? Is it just direct handouts?
Not exactly. The biggest and most important tool is transitional relief. This is crucial for anyone listening who is currently panicking about a 90% rise. It basically caps how much your bill can rise or fall in a single year.
So if my warehouse in Park Royal is supposed to pay 94% more, I don't actually have to pay that all on day one.
No, you don't. It will be phased in over the life of the rating list, which is usually 3 years. You might pay, say, 30% more in year 1, then another chunk in year 2, and fully catch up by year 3. It cushions the blow. It gives you time to adjust your pricing or fix your budget.
But it works the other way too, right?
It does. It is a symmetrical system. If your bill should have dropped by 50%, let's say you were in one of those older Bloomsbury offices, the government might cap your saving. They might say you only save 10% in the first year.
Ah, so the winners essentially subsidize the losers.
To a large extent, yes. It keeps the revenue stream for the local council stable. They simply can't afford for the total tax take to drop off a cliff overnight.
And what about the shops? Is there specific help for the high street crisis we talked about?
There is. It is called RHL relief, retail, hospitality, and leisure. Currently in England, eligible businesses get a massive 75% discount on their business rates bill, capped at £110,000 per business per year.
That is huge. A 75% off coupon for your tax.
It is an absolute lifeline. Without it, thousands of pubs, cafes, and independent shops would simply close tomorrow. It literally makes the difference between profit and loss.
Wow.
But here's the major warning from Clutton's and our sources. This relief is a policy decision. It is not a permanent law. In Wales, that relief has already been reduced down to 40%.
Ouch. So the Welsh government already tightened the purse strings.
They did. And the underlying fear is that England might follow suit in the near future or reduce the cap. Clutton's warns that if this relief is removed or heavily watered down, it would be completely catastrophic for secondary high streets.
Because they just don't have the buffer.
Exactly. You simply can't find that extra cash in the current margin environment. If that 75% discount suddenly becomes 50% or 0%, the lights go out, period.
There is also some mention in the sources of the Labour government's broader plans. A specific paper called Transforming Business Rates.
Yes. The political wind is clearly blowing towards a major rebalancing. The plan essentially is to increase the burden on non-RHL sectors, like the big corporate offices and the giant logistics hubs, to directly subsidize the high street.
Right.
They want to use the tax system to, quote-unquote, level the playing field between the massive online giants and physical local shops.
And obviously we're just reporting what the paper says here, not taking a stance on whether that's the right or wrong economic move.
Exactly, just laying out the policy landscape as it stands.
I also want to touch on the legal changes in the Non-Domestic Rating Act 2023. This sounds like the really boring paperwork stuff, but reading through it, there's some real stingers in there that business owners need to know about.
There certainly are. The biggest shift is the duty to inform. It used to be that the rating system was quite passive. If you built an extension on your property, you could just keep quiet and hope the VOA didn't notice for a few years.
The classic don't ask, don't tell strategy.
Exactly. Now the burden has entirely shifted. Ratepayers now have a strict legal duty to notify the VOA of changes to the property. Extensions, new internal layouts, changes in use, and you have to do it within 60 days.
And if you don't?
There are immediate financial penalties. It essentially turns the taxpayer into the data collector for the government.
That's a huge shift in compliance.
Yeah.
And there's something else about completion notices that the Clutton's Bulletin referred to as squaring the circle. What does that actually mean?
This is a really fascinating loophole closer. Historically, developers would build a brand new office block but intentionally leave it slightly unfinished. Maybe they leave the lights out or they don't put in the final raised flooring.
Why would they do that?
Huh.
To save on construction costs.
No, to save on tax. If a building isn't technically complete and it isn't a hereditament. And if it's not a hereditament, it can't be taxed. So they would leave it in this weird zombie state for months or even years while looking for a tenant, actively avoiding empty property rates.
The unoccupiable trick.
Exactly. The new rules tighten this up aggressively. A completion notice can now legally deem a building complete if it could be finished within 3 months. The local council can look at it and say, you're faking it. Start paying.
Wow. So they can just call your bluff.
Yes. And crucially, this now applies to refurbishments too, not just new builds.
So you can't just gut an office, pause the work indefinitely, and claim a tax holiday forever.
Precisely. The government wants that revenue flowing. They are actively closing all the escape routes.
But they are offering a carrot too, right? Improvement relief.
Yes. This is a very positive change, especially for the green agenda. Previously, if you improved your building, say you installed new eco-friendly air conditioning or expensive solar panels, your property value went up and your tax went up immediately.
Which totally disincentivized investment.
Completely. It penalized you for upgrading, which is the exact opposite of what we want. We want greener, more efficient buildings.
Right.
So now there is a 12-month holiday. If you make qualifying improvements, you do not pay the extra tax on that specific improvement for a full year.
Nice.
It gives you time to actually get some return on investment before the taxman comes knocking for his share. It's a very sensible tweak.
That makes total sense. Oh, and what about empty property relief?
Yeah.
The sources mention a reset period changing.
Yes, the reset period is now 13 weeks. It used to be 6 weeks. You basically have to occupy a property for 3 full months to reset your empty rates allowance. It stops people from moving boxes in for a month just to claim the building is occupied and avoid the empty tax.
They really are tightening all the screws. Okay, we have covered the mechanics, the market data, and the laws. Now let's get highly practical. It is March 1st, 2026. What should the person listening to this right now actually do? Because there is a deadline coming up that isn't April 1st.
Yes, this is the absolute March Madness point. The most critical deadline right now is actually March 31st, 2026, the end of this month.
And why is that specific date so important?
Because that is the hard legal deadline to check or challenge your 2023 valuation.
The old one, the one that is literally about to disappear.
Yes, the list that is about to completely expire.
Why would I care about the old list if a brand new one is starting in 4 weeks?
Two very big reasons. First is money, cash in hand. If your 2023 valuation was wrong, say they measured your floor area incorrectly or they had the wrong usage class applied, you have been overpaying for 3 straight years.
Okay.
If you challenge it before March 31st and win the game, you get a rebate for those 3 years. That could be thousands or even tens of thousands of pounds.
And if I just wait until April 1st to look at it?
That door slams shut, the money is gone forever. You cannot legally challenge the 2023 list once the 2026 list starts, except in extremely rare circumstances. The statute of limitations kicks in.
So literally check the old paperwork right now.
Today. Right now. Go find your current summary valuation. And the second reason is the baseline effect. If you successfully lower your 2023 value, it might lower the starting point for your transitional relief calculation for the new 2026 list.
So it has a knock-on effect. A win on the old list actually helps you on the new list, too.
Exactly. It's a double win. It lowers your past liability and softens your future liability.
Okay, so step 1 is check the 2023 list before the month ends. Step 2?
Prepare for April 1st, 2026. Go to the VOA website. The draft list has been out for a while now. Look up your specific property. See what the new number actually is.
Do not wait for the bill to land on the doormat.
Exactly. Model the liability right now. If it is going up 50%, you need to budget for that today. Talk to your finance director. Talk to your board. And crucially, look at your lease events.
Lease events like rent reviews.
Yes. If you have a rent review coming up, this new rateable value is a key piece of evidence. If the VOA says the open market rent should be high, your landlord will absolutely use that to demand more rent from you. You need to be ready to argue.
The system they use to argue is called check, challenge, appeal right.
That's the formal VOA process. Step 1 is check. That is just checking the physical facts. Is the square footage right? Is the layout correct? Step 2 is challenge. That is actively arguing the valuation methodology is wrong, claiming the rent estimate is too high compared to real local evidence. And step 3 is appeal, which is taking it to a formal tribunal. But you have to do them in that strict order. You can't just sue them immediately.
It sounds like a massive amount of admin.
It is, which is exactly why the sources, especially Ryan and Clutton's, strongly suggest using professional rating advisors. It is a highly complex game with its own distinct legal language. If the financial stakes are high, get a pro.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to zoom out a bit. We started with the date, 2026. But reading the Wikipedia source, we also talked about 1572 and the ancient roots of this whole tax.
The Vagabonds Act of 1572. That is really where the core concept of local rates to pay for the poor started in England. It was a tax on visible wealth, which meant physical property.
And here we are, 454 years later, still taxing visible wealth the exact same way. But the economy has fundamentally changed. We have digital giants making billions without occupying much physical space at all.
Right.
And we have local bakers being taxed based on a rental market that might be completely disconnected from their actual profit margins.
That is the fundamental tension of this whole system. We are trying to tax a 21st century digital agile economy with a bludgeon designed for a 16th century agrarian and early industrial society.
It really feels like the system is struggling to keep up with the sheer speed of commerce. We are taxing the massive Amazon warehouses, the park royals to help save the high street. But the mechanism, this revaluation with a 2-year lag, is so incredibly clunky.
It is clunky. By the time the tax catches up with the boom might be entirely over, or the bust might have already happened and destroyed the business.
So here's a final provocative thought for everyone listening to mull over. If we are taxing the ghost of 2024 and 2026, Maybe physical property shouldn't be the anchor of local tax at all anymore.
That is a very big question.
What if we need to rethink the whole engine? Maybe we need a pure digital turnover tax or a land value tax that ignores the building entirely. Is a property tax based on rental values from 2 years ago really the right way to fund local services in 2026?
It is a question that definitely isn't going away anytime soon. But for now, the system is what it is, and the bill is absolutely in the most.
Indeed it is. So stop listening to us right now, go check your rateable value, and make sure you do not miss that March 31st deadline. Don't let the antecedent date dictate your future fate. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.